All right, so let's talk news story ideas. That's what we've got coming up for next Monday. So we're talking about the story idea stations. You had a variety of things that you could pick from: feature, sports, entertainment. Um, but the key here is on these two news story ideas is that you're going to need a time peg. So they have to be timely. And these are the tougher ones to do, quite frankly, because they require something that's going on as of November 11th. So just like we have to sort of think ahead, unless you're going to do a story at the last minute sometimes, which is okay, but just take your chances. But usually you're also talking about thinking ahead for 2 weeks. So we're going to sort of think like we would on the print side of the publication. And you have to have something that's timely by November 11th, or the impact needs to still be relevant. So you have to sort of think about something that's gone on, that there's still some sort of sweeping impact that you could cover, and people would be interested in it as of November 11th, because that's when our final is going to be due. So the roughs are basically due a week from Monday, and then those are going to come back to you, and then you'll have a little chance to then turn those before then the finals do. So let's look at just some different story ideas that either I've just seen lately in other publications, and it might sort of look for East angles to it. So here's down in Texas, where they've been in school in person for a while, and they're just talking about the tracing protocols. Yeah, COVID-19 sort of the sweeping story that everybody sort of has obviously talked about and dealt with. But I think what you want to look at is, if you're going to take on those stories, is what are the impacts that you can look that are local. And certainly one of those that, as we go back to school, is going to be tracing when they do find cases. And most likely they will, and people will come up with them, that you'll be looking at how are they going to trace who people have been in contact with, and what do they consider contact. Does that mean with a mask on, without? Anyway, so I mean, you've got look at the impact that they're covering in other places. They shut down a SAT because of student parties. Do they start tracking student parties? Do they start trying to identify those kids that have been at parties with their masks off? And I mean, there's a lot of different questions that may come up, and I like this one. I mean, it's looks at what sort of impact you know the pandemic is having on kids and their choices for jobs and what they're looking at. I mean, certainly, you've got kids that'll be in the workforce before others, that may not go into college, that'll be looking to try to find jobs, and it's a tough environment there. So, does that lead into people's conversations? And then let's see, what's this one? It's just sort of what are we focusing on in classes? This is a school that looked at the academic impacts and what they were doing in classes, and how this is all of the quarantine and how we're going about doing this is changing what we're learning in classes. But then also there are just other stories. Don't think that sports can't be news, because this is a story about a kid who broke a freshman cross country record. That's still news. I mean, that's something that maybe not everybody knows about, and you get behind the scenes how it happened, what went into it. Now we're looking at some older ones here, but it's still, I don't try to give away story ideas at this stage. I want you to go a look for them, but this is just things that are going on. I mean, things that are new and different, and there are going to be a lot of that. So you should have plenty of choices for potential story ideas. But this is when the emergency bags went in the classrooms and what they were about. And this was all sort of connected to crisis situations, and seems so far ago now, doesn't it? I just sort of kind of hit a bunch of different topics that you can sort of look at. Is there anything new going on here that we might look at? So they just, we had a drunk driving assembly, and so that sort of led to conversations. So you can look at the calendar and you can see what kinds of things are on the plans to come up. What are the administration, what other topics, are they going to look to talk about? You may remember this. It doesn't even have to be at school as long as it has an impact. So this is back when those oak leaves, those oak leaf mites, I think is what they were, started biting people, and people started having all these bites all over their arms, and they were just really bad that year. And so this is a story we end up covering because a lot of people were dealing with it. You know, a lot of people at school were now, and that has nothing to go what was going in school, but the fact that it impacts the kids at school, or impacts kids, period. Those are potential stories for you. And it doesn't have to, you know, impact everybody. It's just, do we have a large enough group that we can cover? Um, you know, I don't know if we'll be doing anything like this soon, but certainly as we go back to school, certain people are going to be, you know, looking to try to plan things, or, you know, what are they planning? This is back when we were doing the, oh, what is it? The Love Concert, and it was one of the big fundraisers. So, what are some of these organizations to do and to raise funds now? How can they do that in this environment? I mean, there's just some questions that you might ask and might look around and find story ideas. This is a year when we added, you know, an extra team for a drill team. They didn't have a C team drill team, but they had so many kids trying out. I think they felt bad cutting some of them, so they end up adding a C drill team in the mix. Look around, look at new businesses open up in the areas. I get that maybe not a ton, but you may look for businesses that open up, and what would you cover in this situation? Well, this is a place where people go, you know, it's over at Ward Parkway. It's people that would go to eat, you know, they go to shop, but this is also something that kids could have jobs. I mean, so the fact is, what you cover in that story, um, you know, is impacting how is this impacting kids? And one of the ways is it means jobs for kids. So just businesses in the area, places to go eat, you know, those type of things that are popping up, you know, but just be aware of that, know what's coming up. Now, the people that run the businesses may be a little difficult to reach. Um, Again, localizing something. This is when tobacco laws were changing kind of on the KCMO side, but we're so close to that once they pushed those up, that was going to impact kids that were looking to buy cigarettes and stuff. They pushed it to 21. So also that pushes, you know, if I work at a business on the Kansas side, that, you know, kids are going to try to get by with, you know, if I'm a teenager, do I feel sort of, I don't know, do I feel like I have to sell to my friends, or do I know that I'm gonna get busted, you know, by the government or by my manager if I do that? I mean, so even if it's even happening on KCMO side, you may be looking at some impact that's happening to kids, not just smokers, but also the kids that, you know, work in these stores or whatever. So it's also finding the sources here for stories. It's important. This is more the end of the year, but it's when they were looking to sort of, you know, they were redoing a classroom, marketing room, kind of revamped its entire, you know, layout. So things as simple as that can be story ideas. I like follow up sometimes on things that have already happened. We always sort of do previews to like charity drives and that kind of stuff. But how'd they go? What happened? If you're if it's something that kids know and it's still close to that date, and you can get the information, you know, I mean, here you've got a school in Texas, I think, that looked to see how many coats they raised and what happened to them. This is the year they almost cut gymnastics. So that was something on the table. You can go and read up on the board agenda for the district and see what they have plans coming up or what they voted on. People miss that all the time. They don't go to places like the board agenda and look. So we have people on staff that sometimes do it, but if you take the initiative to sort of find out those things and ask those questions, you may find a story. You know, it depends on the national stories, but this was obviously after the Boston Marathon bombing, and you're going to find that, you know, that you had parents that would run marathons. The security was different. How that was, you know, they reluctant to travel at that point, which, you know, people are reluctant to travel now. But so you're looking at national stories, as long as they have local impacts, that's okay to sort of to address. This is when they came out with new technology for a car that dealt with teens. You know, are you limited about how fast you know, you can limit how fast a car can go. You can keep them from texting and driving. I mean, there's some new technology that comes out nationally that has direct impact on teens. But look at this, just they did an ethical survey in their school at this place. They promoted a new honor council. So it's just finding out, maybe go down to the office and talk to administration, see what kind of things are changing or coming up, or, ask some questions. Again, this is a national story, after, after sort of just the police shootings, and then that were police that were shot, what sort of local impact yet all that happened this summer. So are there any waves that carry on to now into November? What's going on now that kids are connected with some of the protests? I mean, there's certainly lots of big events going now that might have waves, but I'd really have to look at specifically where students are impacted. This is just another business back when Chipotle opened up. I think if you just tune your ears to what people are complaining about sometimes, no doubt this is a story about how people were stranded waiting on the bus or whatever, and there turned out to be a bus driver shortage they covered. But I think if you just listen to what people are complaining about on social media, amongst your friends, you can sort of look to see if there's a story there. Driver's license tests. I mean, so these topics that kids deal with. I did this at a summer workshop and used this a couple of years back. But anything that changes in the driver's license test and how those are going to be handled via COVID, I don't know. I'm like, those are all potential stories for you. This was the Truce Tour that was a communication between schools, an event between schools where we got to go sort of see what schools were like on the KCMO side, and they came here to see what our schools were like. And so it's this kind of cultural exchange that one of the teachers would always do. So they can be, field trips, even though you're not going to have, like in-person field trips. Maybe there's things that are virtual that are still interesting enough to cover. This is just construction in the area and how it impacted drivers and kids getting to school, a fun run that they did. This was all the way back, and I'll probably end here just to kind of give you some sense of, this happened in the summer of that year. And I think this is about our second issue that we covered this. And this was the girl, and you may remember it. This is a girl who was kidnapped outside of the Target and killed. Maybe you just remember hearing about it because it's been so long. And you're probably 2 or 3 then when it first happened. And so, so this is what happened. Like, it happened that summer, but it had such big ripples that it carried all the way into the school year, because what happened after that? People didn't go to that Target. People in the area were called to sort of search for her. People started taking self-defense classes at that time. So a lot of high school kids, their parents were much more sort of reluctant to let them go out, and then got them into self-defense classes. So ultimately, it's a question of, do I have ripples from some big event that carry through to now? Do I have something real and timely that I can cover? So that just gives you, I just want to give you a cross section of some stories that we've covered, or other publications have covered, or in the news, in just a little different way to sort of think about what you're looking for your news story ideas. But you're going to have to go out, engage, and try to talk to people, look things up on the calendar, use those story idea stations that, like we did, how we went and we read other papers, we looked at other daily newspapers. Oh, those are all activities that you should sort of engage in to try to come up with story ideas. You can't just wait for them to come to you. So there you go. If you have any questions, email me.